United States is the land of dreams, but it also happens to be the land of a million ghost stories. Haunted hotels, houses, hospitals, and other buildings that have a long history of unsolved mysteries or highly questionable events that can be corroborated with real news stories adds a lot to their haunted legacy. Whether you are a believer or not, America's towns are filled with spooky stories passed down through time. From an asylum to a cave with a witch, these are some of the most haunted places in the United States. Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is the largest hand-cut stone masonry building in North America and supposedly the second largest in the world after the Kremlin in Moscow. It began its construction in 1858 and opened its door to patients in 1864. Once known as the Weston State Hospital, this massive structure was designed by architect Richard Andrews to maximize sunlight and fresh air. It was believed that the building itself would serve as a healing environment. In 1950s, this West Virginia facility reached its peak, housing more than 2,400 patients, even though it was designed to hold only 250. Patients were physically restrained and often given inhuman treatment such as electric shock therapy and lobotomies. The severe overcrowding led to inhuman conditions and patients started acting increasingly violent, from starting fires to attacking staff members. After more than a century in operation, the facility was forced to close in 1994 due to reforms in mental health treatment and the deterioration of the building. Hundreds of people died here before the facility closed, and the souls of some of those patients are said to linger to this day, and many have claimed to see their shadowy figures roaming the crumbling halls. The spirits that are said to haunt the site today date back to the Civil War era, when the asylum's ground served as a military post. Paranormal tours of the facility feature 2-hour visits to the asylum's 4 main hotspots. The more intense ghost hunt is an 8-hour overnight paranormal adventure with experienced ghost hunting guides. Mizpah Hotel opened in 1907 as one of Nevada's first luxury hotels, complete with solid granite walls and Victorian-era decoration. More than 100 years of rough-and-tumble Nevada history has added to its haunted legacy. One of the most popular legends is that of a woman who died on the 5th floor and her soul never left the building. The lady in red now reportedly makes her presence known by whispering in men's ears and leaving pearls from her broken necklace on guests' pillows. This historic building was fully restored in 2011, and the Mizpah owners honors Lady in Red's reputation by letting visitors stay in the Lady in Red suite and serving the Red Lady Blood Mary at the hotel restaurant. This luxury ocean liner sailed the Atlantic Ocean for more than 3 decades, from 1936 to 1967. Actually, her days as a luxury ship were short-lived for first 3 years, during which the Queen Mary carried Hollywood celebrities like Elizabeth Taylor and Audrey Hepburn, and dignitaries like General Dwight D. Eisenhower. In 1939, she was stripped of her amenities and began her second life as a World War II troop ship. During this time, Winston Churchill signed the historic D-Day Declaration aboard Queen Mary, and at the conclusion of the war, she was restored to her former glory and traversed the Atlantic for nearly 2 more decades. On Halloween 1967, the Queen Mary departed on her last cruise, eventually docking in Long Beach, California, her final resting place. The ship is reportedly haunted by the spirits of those who died abroad, such as the young sailor who was crushed to death by a door in the engine room, children who drowned in the pool, and a crew member who was murdered in cabin B340. The city of Long Beach purchased the ship in 1967 and turned it into a floating hotel and restaurant, and it still serves that purpose to this day. Queen Mary now offers tour packages so that you can also follow the footsteps of some of the deceased passengers who live here, and you might get an opportunity to visit the ship's engine room, which is considered by many to be a hotbed of paranormal activity. This Gothic-style prison opened in Philadelphia in 1829 and became the first in the US to implement solitary confinement, a hotly debated practice to this day. Prisoners suffered in gloomy stone cells with virtually no human contact. They lived alone, exercised alone, and ate alone. When an inmate left his cell, a guard would cover his head with a hood so he couldn't see or be seen. Notorious criminals such as Al Capone and bank robber Willie Sutton were held inside its innovative wagon wheel design. Before they were paroled, James Bruno, or the Big Joe, and several male relatives were incarcerated here between 1936 and 1948 for the alleged murders in the Calarus massacre of 1934. At its completion, the building was the largest and most expensive public structure ever erected in the United States, and quickly became a model for more than 300 prisons worldwide. Due to overcrowding, the prison closed in 1971, but the ghosts of the inmates are still caged here to this day. Some reports about the gruesome torture techniques used here, like chaining an inmate's tongue to his wrists, adds to its haunted history. Tortured spirits, including Slick Willie Sutton, continue to relentlessly haunt the grounds today. Visitors claim to see their apparition wandering the corridors, hear mischievous whispers and pacing footsteps in abandoned cell blocks. Eastern State Penitentiary, one of the most haunted places in America, now welcomes thousands of visitors every year, both for its museum and annual Terror Behind the Wall celebration, which features 6 haunted attractions within the prison walls for Halloween. Considered as one of Savannah's most haunted locations, the Moore River Brewing Company has played many roles before becoming the beer house and restaurant it is today. One of the oldest buildings in town, it began as a hotel in 1821, then served as a hospital for yellow fever victims during the Civil War. Needless to say, the building saw a lot of death during that time, and many believe some of that energy still lingers to this day. Men were killed in the hotel during heated debates, including a Yankee who was beaten to death by locals in 1860. Visitors have reported seeing bottles mysteriously flying through the air and have witnessed guests being pushed, touched, and even slapped by unseen forces. Many of the restaurant's guests have reported seeing a woman in period clothing staring down from the top of the staircase. Other sightings include a resident apparition and taunting spirit named Toby around the billiards room, and a spirit named Mrs. Johnson who resides upstairs. The Stanley Hotel's Royal Georgian architecture and world-renowned whiskey bar have lured travelers since the hotel opened in 1909. This hotel, nestled in Colorado's mountain wilderness, inspired Stephen King's best-selling novel turned horror film The Shining. First owners Mr. and Mrs. Stanley, who opened the resort, have reportedly never left. According to the staff, at night mysterious piano music could be heard, which has often been connected to Mrs. Stanley playing her piano in the music room, and Mr. Stanley occasionally shows up in photographs. There have also been reports of lights turning on and off, bags being unpacked, and echoes of children's laughter heard in the hallways. Paranormal experts often call the Stanley Hotel as one of the most active ghost sites in the United States. The hotel plays out its reputation quite cleverly, offering nightly ghost tours and psychic consultations. Guest bedrooms also have a TV channel that plays The Shining on a 24-hour loop. Portland was one of the most dangerous ports in the United States during the early 19th century. The old Portland Underground, locally known as the Shanghai Tunnels, is a group of passages mainly underneath the old Chinatown neighborhood and connecting to the main business section. The tunnels connected the basements of many hotels and taverns to the waterfront of the Willamette River. They were originally built to move goods from the ships docked on the Willamette to the basement storage areas, allowing businesses to avoid streetcar and train traffic on the streets when delivering their goods. But these tunnels were also the epicenter of an illicit maritime practice known as Shanghaiing, a form of human trafficking. Organized crime was the center of many of these stories. According to local lore, swindlers preyed upon unsuspecting men in the local salons, which were often outfitted with trapdoors that deposited the victims directly into a network of underground tunnels. These men were then supposedly held captive, drugged, and eventually transported to the waterfront, where they were sold to ships as unpaid laborers. Some worked for several years before finding their way back home. Though many historians have stated that although the tunnel exists, but there is no evidence that they were used for these illicit activities. Regardless, there have been several reports that the tunnels are in fact haunted by the angry and lost spirits of the captives who died in the dark recesses beneath the city. You yourself can check that out, as many groups offer guided tours of the Portland tunnels where visitors get a sinister history lesson in complete darkness. The Battle of Gettysburg, fought in and around the town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania by Union and Confederate forces during the American Civil War, was one of the bloodiest in American history, with somewhere between 46,000 and 51,000 young men from both armies dying in the three-day conflict. Many of these soldiers never received a proper burial after their untimely deaths, and many believe the souls of these men still wandered the field to look for their weapons and their comrades. There have been multiple reports of unexplained sounds and apparition in and around this area. Even the ghost hunting group, the Ghost Adventures crew, investigated this place and found some very credible evidences. Built in 1796 by General David Bradford, Myrtles Plantation is considered to be one of America's most haunted sites. The house is rumored to be on top of an Indian burial ground and is home to at least 12 different ghosts. It is also often reported that 10 murders occurred in the house, but historical records only indicate the murder of William Winter, an attorney who lived in the plantation from 1865 until 1871. He was shot by a stranger. After being shot, he staggered inside the house and died trying to climb the stairs. He died on the 17th step of the stairs. Until today, visitors as well as employees in the hotel still hear his dying footsteps. Among several legends and ghost stories, one particular tale of a former slave named Chloe, who had her ear chopped off by her master after she was reportedly caught eavesdropping. She got her revenge by poisoning a birthday cake and killing two of the master's daughters, but was then hung by her fellow slaves. Chloe now reportedly wanders around the plantation wearing a turban to conceal her missing ear. Many popular TV shows have extensively covered this location, including Unsolved Mysteries, which filmed a segment about the alleged haunting at the plantation. According to the host Robert Stack, the production crew experienced technical difficulties during the production of the segment. The Myrtles was featured on a 2005 episode of Ghost Hunters and also in the TV series Ghost Adventures. The television series Most Terrifying Places in America also profiled the plantation. The Legend of Belle is a tale that's begun as a part of Southern folklore for almost 2 centuries. The story begins in 1817 when a farmer named John Bell moved from North Carolina to a 230-acre farm in Robertson County, Tennessee, a rural area not far from the Kentucky border. Legend has it that soon after arriving, Bell and his family began hearing strange noises, rattling chains, choking sounds, and heavy knocking on the walls. Eventually, the family heard voices, or rather a single voice belonging to a witch for which the story is named. Many believe that when the witch departed, she fled inside this 490 feet long cave. The story really entered Southern folklore when Bell died under suspicious circumstances. People said he had been poisoned by the witch who had been hunting the farm. Despite having number of versions of this tale, the legend of the Bell Witch lives on today in fiction and in facts. The famous low-budget indie horror film The Blair Witch Project was partially inspired by this legend, and the movie An American Haunting starring Donald Sutherland as John Bell was a more exact retelling of this infamous folktale. There have been many reports of paranormal occurrences happening in and around this area, and also some very famous paranormal investigation group have thoroughly investigated this place, concluding that they have found some very credible evidences to back the claims. The cave is privately owned and tours are now given during the summer months and in October. These were 10 most haunted locations in the United States. What do you think? Which other location could have been included in this list? Do comment below. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please be sure to hit that like button and don't forget to hit that bell icon after subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the internet.